welcome back to another episode of the TreeTopChat. This is actually episode 47. Last week we had a conversation with Johan Östberg about Svenska Trädförening, about what they're doing, some other fun stuff. So if you're Swedish or speak Swedish for that matter, make sure to check it out. Check that episode out, and as is a very good update on what's going on in the Swedish arborist industry. In terms of the store, we just signed an agreement with Edelrid, hence the cap here. So we brought in some of their better arborist gear, the TreeTopChat harness, some lanyards and some pulleys, and we're going to see what else we're going to bring in there. But today we are going the furthest south, Tasmania, to speak to Steve, who works at the Tree Project. These people are scientists, imaging professionals and tree climbers, and they work on very interesting various projects related to mapping trees around the world. So this should be a very interesting and conversation and episode. So as usual, if you have any questions for Steve or us, leave them in the box below. So there he is. Steve, welcome.
How you doing, buddy? Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Loud and clear. I see you have a big Teufelberger sign in the back of it.
Well, you got to represent, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So how's everything down in Tasmania?
To be honest, mate, it is a bit hectic at the moment because Jen and I are leaving Tasmania for a few months over winter tomorrow.
Okay.
So outside of this,
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
outside of this shot, it's complete chaos. So.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this field? What is your background, and how long have you been doing this?
To be honest, I originally started out as just a commercial photographer, and then my wife, Dr. Jen, sang. We were holidaying in Mexico, believe it or not, and we were having beers at some pub somewhere. Looked up at some power lines, and there was all these orchids growing on a power line. Yeah. And Jen was like, I'm going to study those for my PhD. And then we spent basically the next 3 years climbing trees up and down the east coast of Australia, surveying epiphytes, orchids and ferns in the lovely rainforests here in Australia.
Cool. So how long have you been doing this then?
Well, the Tree Projects probably started in 2015, I guess. And that was with some help of some friends in New Zealand, Catherine Kirby and Andrew Harrison, of course, two-time NZ climbing champion. And we've just, I have to say, we don't really have a plan or an agenda, but we just keep going and doing what we do. And it seems to work out fine. We have lots of fun, which is the main thing.
Nice. So who's actually financing this project?
No one. We are lucky.
No one.
Me and Jed basically finance it. It's definitely a passion project. We don't get paid for 99% of what we do, but we've decided to live a very simplified life. We don't really have a lot of stuff, and where I'm going for the next 4 months is actually to work out in the deserts of Australia, out around Alice Springs. So I'll get some money then. But for the Tree Projects, we sell some prints. It's not a huge money maker, and we get some grants to make the Big Tree Hunters film, for example. And we do rely heavily on sponsorship for our gear and stuff, because without that, that's the biggest barrier to, I think, a lot of people getting into recreational tree climbing is just the cost of gear. And so those sponsors really help us out with a lot of stuff, basically.
I can imagine that. So Tasmania is quite distant from where the vast majority of our follower base is located. So can you tell us a little bit about Tasmania? It's a very fascinating island. I think a lot of endemic species, and the giant eucalyptus trees and acacias, and very nice fauna there. So can you share some information?
Well, Tasmania is just, I think, one of those really classic relatively small islands where there's lots of species endemism. There's very unique things only found there. And in the greater landscape of the Australian continent, we are very wet, we are very mountainous, and we have a lot of basically forests as a result of that. You know, really famous stuff like the Tasmanian tiger, which is unfortunately extinct, but right now the Tasmanian devil. We had two Tasmanian devils fighting outside our front door in the suburbs here, like a couple of months ago.
Oh, really?
I thought we would never have expected it, but you know, I opened up the front door to see what was going on. There's two Tassie devils having a go. I was like, ah! So quickly shut the door. But
Yeah.
it is, you know, it's very reminiscent of places like Vancouver Island in British Columbia, for example. Maybe a place like Iceland as well, like just those really unique islands which have had a very different creation and evolutionary pathway to like the bigger land masses around them. So there's a lot of unique stuff here.
Yeah, nice. So you know, but you know, it's a pretty big island. It's about 200 kilometers from south of Melbourne.
Yep. So it's about 200 kilometers long and about 200 kilometers wide, roughly, and it's roughly in the shape of a triangle. So, in the having grown up in Australia, distances are not. We have a different measuring scale, basically, for how long it takes to get places. So Tasmania is really small because a lot of places, you know, the next town's like an hour away. So it's a very different place in that Australian sort of cultural landscape as well.
Cool. Yeah, I saw some stuff about, you know, the island on the Wikipedia, and you know, there's a lot to read, and you know, a lot of, you know, various species of trees and wildlife. So if we're going back to the Tasmania Big Tree Mapping Project, what is it in essence? You know, what are you actually doing?
I'm trying to get people activated, to be honest, mate. Like the bit. If these trees were in the States or in Scandinavia, for example, like I think that they would be much better respected. And I just, you know, as a tree nerd, as a tree lover, it's really hard to travel to places like the Pacific Northwest, where they have such a great understanding and sort of knowledge around their forests and these trees have a cultural significance in those places. Whereas here in Tasmania, it's just like, you know, we don't really have that. And that's, to be honest, come about by many decades of confrontation over the forest, like forest protests and all that kind of stuff. And that's a really necessary part of Tasmania at this moment, because a lot of places around the world don't have wilderness. Like from my house, I can walk out my front door and probably cross 3 roads and then just walk through the bush all the way to the other side of Tasmania. So there is a fantastic amount of just unroaded, wild places where hardly anyone ever goes that we just aren't really respecting. And I think us as Tasmanians don't have that knowledge of how special that stuff is. But if you go to some place like going back to America, for example, where they have a very, you know, their redwoods and their sequoias in particular, they're a culturally significant tree. They're ecologically significant for sure. But within the American psyche, those trees are really important. And we just don't have that here in Tasmania. So that's one of the things we're really trying to do with the Big Tree Register, is just let people know that there's massive trees out there. They're relatively easy to get to, and you don't really need to like have a PhD to enjoy them. Like you can just go to the base of these massive trees and just stoke out, mate. You can be like, what the hell? This is great. And that's basically all we're trying to do, just create a better culture around these giant trees in Tasmania.
That's very nice. Yeah, I think, you know, people don't really you know, understand, you know, the all the positives about trees, what they bring to humans in terms of, you know, cleaning air, you know, and all that. You know, there's there's a whole range of, you know, positive sides with trees and you know, nature in general. So that's very good.
Yeah, that's
So, but you've been working on various projects, you know, all over the world. You know, can you tell us? You know, you were talking about, you know, the U.S., you know, Moor Woods and, you know, the redwoods and the sequoias and stuff. So, you know, how do you work on these projects and what do they entail?
uh, it's every project is different. Like in Taiwan, for example, we had like a local person there, Rebecca Hsu, who was very high up in the forestry department of Taiwan, and she really championed our project, the idea of our project, to her colleagues, and basically invited us over to Taiwan to take this photo and do this project. So that one, Taiwan came about really, really easily. Like the Pacific Northwest projects that we did, uh, to be honest, mate, it was just kind of a tree holiday where we had a product at the end of it. You know, it wasn't, we didn't have any, it was all self-funded. We didn't have any funding from anyone to do that project. We, you know, begged, borrowed, and stole, you know, some gear from like Westbur. They gave us some stuff, and you know, Tim Kovar at Tree Climbing Planet really helped us out, and just a lot of dudes, a lot of just really enthusiastic tree guys, just, oh, dude, you want to do something cool? Yeah. And they would just like drive out to these rando spots that we found trees at, like, and help us for a couple of days set up this camera rig. And so I guess the key thing is like there's no method other than having that product at the end, and that journey about how we go about achieving that goal is always, it's always very, very different. So yeah, every project's really different. So
Oh, nice, nice. So, you know, you talked about, you know, your mission that, you know, about getting people to understand, you know, that they have these fantastic trees around them. But, you know, I assume there are several aspects to the purpose, you know, of this project for you, right?
definitely. Uh, Going back to the basic confrontation that we have in Tasmania culturally about our forests is that we have, you're in culturally, you're said to be either a bogan, which is like a logger sort of, you know, mindset, or you're a greenie, like an environmentalist. And the society, the culture here is really polarized between those two camps. And I think regular people, normal people, who aren't part of those really polarized camps, just aren't engaging with forests because they think that the forests are a battleground, or they're not, you can't go these places. So it's really just a public education resource where we give people the tools where they can discover for themselves what we have here in Tasmania. So everything's free, everything's open. If people ring me up, my phone number's on the bloody website. People to ring me up, say, where can I go? I was like, mate, I'll chat to those people for like an hour and like make a plan for them. And really, really coming up in the next few months, coming up to our summer, Christmas period, we're going to be launching like a new website, which is purely focused on those kind of people, the tourism aspect. And so it's going to be called Big Tree State. And it's going to be
Okay.
a much more well-presented, much more concise, tourism-focused information resource where people can actually plan out a drive. We'll have links to accommodation places nearby. We're going to get
Okay.
our friends, our colleagues at Forestry Watch, an organisation here in Tasmania. We've been tagging out tracks through forestry land to go to these big trees because there's no tracks. It's hard. Like, there's no walks. You just park your car literally on the side of a dirt road, really, walk in 100 meters, and there's all these giant trees. So like a place like, if you have been, California, where these trees are presented, they have signage, they have walks, you have a car
Very
park,
nice.
you have a toilet, you know, all these basic things that allow people to enjoy these spaces we don't have. And so this I see is that first critical step, and just letting everyone know that these trees exist and you can go and see them. It's easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You know, I've been up to Moor Woods,
Oh,
you know, north of San Francisco, and like you said, you know, there's parking lots, you know, there's information signs, you know, there's restaurants, and you know, there's pathways along the trees, and they tell the history about the trees, and it's so you're essentially putting this on your website, to give people certain trails, what they can look and expect in terms of trees
Oh, definitely, yeah.
and different things of those. Yeah,
So it's
that's very cool.
yeah, and like again, we're not getting paid to do it, but it's just such a basic resource that is needed to start something, and that's where I think that we are. Like, I look at it as like I have this gift of understanding these trees and knowing where these trees sit in the global context of like awesome trees, because I've been around and seen like and climbed trees and like love them, and I think that I'm super lucky to have this ability, to have the knowledge and the ability to create resources like this. And I'd rather spend my own time doing it rather than write grant proposals and all this sort of stuff. It doesn't take much to make a website, so just have a crack and like get the ball rolling, basically.
Nice. So you're talking about those, seeing some of the posts that you have, these trees are absolutely huge. So, I suppose you're using the standard climbing equipment, except for, the ropes that might need to be much longer, right? So, how do you climb these trees?
We basically start out. Well, I'll get the tool right here. Whoop. All right, so this is our semi-legal air cannon. So a lot of people have been making these in Tasmania, and we just shoot like a fishing reel up into the trees, like a 10-ounce throw bag with fishing line. And mate, I can almost shoot over the top of any tree in Tasmania with this setup. And
wow,
yeah, but then you always capture. So you never start a climb of a big tree with an isolated branch. You've always got half the canopy captured in your climbing line. So, and you're always like super keen at the base. It's like, yeah, let's go. Whoa. Then if you're like the first one up, you kind of get closer and closer to see what you're actually like anchored over, or the 7 things that you kind of got captured in your line. It's like, oh, I might land it off real quick here and try and reset that line. But yeah, like pioneering these trees is, mate, it's a sensational bloody experience, like if you get a 60-meter shot and you've still got 30 meters left to go, like, mate, it's bloody hard work. And it's a whole lot of fun, because when we take like production climbers, like arborists that work in trees all day, every day in the suburbs, and we take them out to climb a giant tree, we always sort of really emphasize that it's not a work climb. And so you never like throw ropes out of the tree. Like if you've got a long line, like a 35 or a 60-meter line that you have to reroute in the tree, mate, you pull that line up and you like lower it gently down through that tree, because you're going to damage the tree. It's 500 years old. And we really try and just show those guys that, this is an amazing place, and holy smokes, it's just an hour from your home. So yeah, it's a pretty special experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what kind of, do you meet a lot of, animals, birds, snakes, lizards and stuff when you climb those trees?
In Tasmania, no, we're quite cold, so snake interactions are pretty low. I have had some.
I read you had three different species, right?
3 different species of snake in Tasmania. 2 you don't even worry about, but there's one called the tiger snake. It's the tiger snake is like just the classic, I was going to swear, like F off snake. It's huge, it blacks, it just loves to sit right in the middle of the path, because the path is the most exposed place in the landscape, and it just sort of sits there and you walk past every time. But they're pretty docile, to be honest, because of the cold temperatures, but it's pretty classic. Some of the best wildlife experiences I've had climbing a giant tree is stumbling across 2 possums, and they are a marsupial, like tree climbing animal, and they live in the suburbs and stuff like that. They're really cute, But I was advancing a line up in a big tree, and there was like this huge hollow branch that just went out from me, and I was climbing, lanyarding up. So I was above the main line a little bit and sort of lanyarding up, and I was just about to sort of clip into my next spot. And I must have kicked that dead branch or something like that. And these two possums just come out. And like this limb is like 40, 50 meters above the ground, and they just come out of it and look back towards me. And there's nowhere else to go apart from me. And I'm just at this tree going, no, don't jump on me. Don't jump on me. And like, I was really, because I always thought they were just going to go, ah! But no, they jumped and landed in a branch nearby, so they were fine. But another classic, people often ask, what's the coolest wildlife that I've seen up there? And a lot of the time for me, it's the best thing is just watching wildlife be wildlife. And to just explain that a little bit further, if you're up in a really big tree in a wild forest, a lot of the time the birds don't understand what you are. Like they haven't seen you. Like I haven't seen a person in a tree. So it's like penguins in the Antarctic or something like that that aren't afraid of people because they don't know what people are. So on the ground, sure, these same birds would be scared of you, but I've had kookaburras come up like this far away, wild kookaburras, and try and eat my green lanyard. The end of my green lanyard, thinking it was a snake or something like that. And like other birds, just like just groups of birds traveling in gangs through the canopy and feeding on all the insects. You can hear them coming for a little bit, and they get into your tree. They're all dancing around you, and they fly away. So it's those experiences of just not being a human, I guess, and seeing wildlife be wild is probably the best experience I've had. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, really would be nice to experience that. So, when you're up there, you have some pretty stunning videos and photos, and can you tell us a little bit about how you capture those, and the process behind that art?
To be honest, like 95 or 99% of it really is just capturing what we do. Like we just go and climb a giant tree, and I just get some shots basically. Like when we climb with our climbing group, I'm usually sort of a bit hands-on, trying to manage people and guide them through the experience and help them out a little bit. But like for example, this week we went and climbed a really big tree on Wednesday, I think it was, with just like pro climbers, like dudes that really knew how to climb. And it was so good because it just up to the top of the tree. Like Cal was like going out all the way out in this branch. I was like, hold up, Cal. Like just got a nice shot, and trying to like, move about the canopy of these trees, like trying to find great angles and great ways where you can really show the tree and how big and enormous and like the structure of it, but also show the people that did give it context as well. And I guess it's just one of those things, like you guys, I've never used a chainsaw. So using a chainsaw in a tree for me is like, I wouldn't even like, I would have no clue. But like maybe you could think that a camera is like that chainsaw for me. I know how to clip it off and keep it safe. I know how to work with it. I know how not to break it. I know not to smash it around. I know the angles. I know how branches kind of work in photos and the depth of photos and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. But video is always a lot harder because you have to be still. And like, being still when the world is moving, the whole structure around you is very flexible and in motion. That's really hard work. So yeah.
Well, are you using helmet-mounted cameras as well?
No, it's all. We do have some GoPros, but I never really like the footage that comes out of it. To be honest, it's always too quick, and I really, really to show the experience and the subject, you just need to let life happen in front of that camera. So a lot of the time, just really want to have a still shot where there's some motion or a person's actually climbing in the shot. rather than the camera itself like pan up and pan down and stuff like that. So like it's being still in a tree and having 10 seconds, even just 10 seconds of like stillness, because you're kind of working, you're always landing off and trying to get into the spot. And then you're like, okay. And so you just got to have those really like, but with a photo, it's like snap. You can kind of just grab it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I suppose, since you were studying photography, right? So you're a professional photographer, you could say, right?
Uh, I think professional in attitude. I try and do a really good job every time, but I have no training or anything like that. Yeah, just all self-taught climbing and all self-taught camera stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people are trying to improve, their content on Instagram and take better pictures and so forth. So, is there any advice you can give people who are looking to improve, their content? Because your footage is really amazing, right? So, is there any hits or tips you can give people?
I think the biggest thing with any like recording or like still or motion is you have to give yourself the opportunity. Like you can dream about it like all you want, but what you need to do is actually get one of your mates and go and climb a tree together and be like, oi, oi, go and stand over there. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to get a good shot. So I think in a tree, when people are wanting to move and wanting to experience that space, the best tip is be the boss and direct them to where you want them to be in the photo, because like the stuff moves so quick. And like when you're handling like a $5,000 or $7,000 camera piece of equipment, mate, you're not like you're not getting it out of your pocket real quick. It's like, all right, I'm gonna like just like a chainsaw, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like a chainsaw. Like you're gonna have your main line real secure. You're gonna lanyard off. You're gonna get in your position and try and be real still, and then you're gonna start working. And like while you're doing that, like life is happening. So just be like, hey,
Yeah,
stop, do that. Like go back down and climb again. And like, we're going to get the sickest shot. So directing is probably the biggest tip, I guess. Yeah.
exactly. Arranging the shot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can be in the moment, but often the moments go far past too quickly when you're in a tree, because
Yeah,
your life's at stake as well as getting a good shot. So
yeah. So you've done a documentary as well, right? Tasmania's Big Tree Hunters.
yeah, so
So,
we just had the premiere a couple of weeks ago now, and have done another screening as well here in Tasmania, and it's been really it's been amazing, to be honest. We created the film as part of a Tasmanian government arts grant to tell the story about these big trees, and we sort of mentioned the threats that the trees have and the forests have, like logging, for example, and climate change, and sort of the apathy in our Tasmanian culture for our giant trees. But we tried to tell this story through the lens of 5 characters and 5 people who have all different backgrounds, and basically follow their tree journey about the particular thing that they're interested in about the big trees, because you can just see a big tree and that's it. But once you become really engaged, you find a cause, or you find something to really, really love, like climbing, or like, forestry, or something like that. So follow 5 different stories, and it all just ties together to let people know that while we do have big trees here in Tasmania, our big tree population is really old, and we don't have the next generation. We have very few examples of 300-year-old trees that are like 70, 80 meters tall. There's like only 2 locations that I can think of where I've seen trees that are healthy next generation trees. And so just, I guess, another public education resource that allows people to connect with either one of the characters or multiple characters, depending on the viewer's personal background and story, but also tells the story sort of in a real way, but not in a confrontational or combative way. We don't blame anyone. We just tell the story how it is, and people can make their own minds up.
Yeah.
It's been really great. At the premiere, we made sure to invite not all of our mates. So we invited a list of the government officials, people from the tourism industry, different tour companies. And so we really wanted to make that event as much of a cultural turning point as we could. And to be honest, it kind of feels like that's kind of happened, because there's been a lot of buzz about big trees in the last few weeks after it. So it's great.
Okay, so very successful here.
And
so are you planning it?
Sorry.
Sorry.
We're
Go ahead.
also going to have. Nobody else has really seen it yet, because we're trying to work out how to deliver it. And this coming Thursday, we're going to have start live streaming events on Facebook, where we show the film, but also can do a presentation after that goes a bit more in depth about Tasmania and the state of big trees here. So that's coming up next Thursday, Australian time, which is not so good for European. But we're going to further down next week or two have specialized events for European audiences and American audiences, and sort of cater to other people's time frames as well. So keep an eye on our Facebook and Instagram for those. Yeah.
Great. Looking forward to that.
Mm.
So you also have a quite awesome YouTube channel. So what kind of content can people find there for educational purposes?
A lot. I think if you go, it's a really great way to see the journey that we've been on over the last 5 or 6 years, and the stuff that we were used to make and what we're making now is really different kind of material. But primarily over the last year, we've been making short, sort of fun educational videos about individual eucalypt species here in Australia. And for that, we traveled as many places as we could to sort of discover trees, unique eucalypts from every corner of Australia, basically. But we had planned to go up the east coast of Australia on a trip, but COVID kicked in. So we all sort of had to hunker down here in Tasmania. But luckily, we already had Western Australia and the southern coastline, South Australia, trees already filmed. So there's 12 videos in total there, and that was a lot of fun making that, for sure. Yeah.
So you touched on COVID there. So how affected has Tasmania been from the COVID virus?
Oh, mate, it really pays to be at the end of the earth on a small island. COVID doesn't exist, mate. Like, we have no. I know COVID's really bad in a lot of places, for sure, and but it really feels like in Tasmania we've been spectators to it more than anything else. So, from April last year, we've had no active cases in Tasmania.
Oh, really?
And so we've had free travel in the States, and to be honest, to be honest, it's been really great that our government, people have attitudes about lockdowns and stuff like that. But for example, there was just a wild case in Sydney, and I think they just locked down the whole entire city for 3 days. It's like, all right, you just got to stay home for 3 days. They keep the testing up and stuff like that. And if there's no more cases, they start to open it back up. But it's.
But I think the lockdowns in Melbourne has been significantly longer than 3 days, right?
Oh, heck yeah, that was.
Curfew for a couple of months at least.
Oh, mate, that was bloody hard. And I can really understand if I was doing that, I'd get really unhappy, saying it very nicely about that situation, for sure. But the result of that is, like, we in Australia, there's no active cases. There was one case in Sydney, and there was nothing for a month before that. And, so we've got free travel and basically, I wouldn't say no fear here in Australia as a result of very strict lockdowns and sort of controls. But, people aren't dying as well. So it's pretty, you know, it's a very different response with a very different outcome, and the economics of it and stuff like that, I don't really know too much
Yeah,
about, but it's worked if we wanted to stop people dying, that's for sure. So,
yeah, exactly. Get the herd immunity. I had my first shot a couple of days ago, so
oh, nice one.
that's good.
I think,
Yeah.
I think our government's, uh, our vaccine rollout's going very poorly, but we don't really need it because we're not like a really active
No,
cases, and so I think a lot of there's only so much supply the world can have instantly of like billions of doses and stuff like that. So I think Australia's a low priority because we aren't in the middle of COVID. We're sort of distant to it a little bit. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think we're getting down to our standard question. What's your favorite piece of the tree climbing gear of all times, and why?
Oh, well, my favorite piece is also probably the piece that we need the most, and that is the 180 meter, 600 footer Turfelberger KM3 Max. Without
Yeah,
that single unbroken 180 meter line, our job would be a lot more difficult for sure. And once we get a tree aligned to the summit of a tree, we can, if we want to come back to that tree, we'll leave a tag line or a trace line in the tree. And so next time we can basically just rock up with the rope and tie it onto the trace line and then haul that line straight up. So, I think it's, mate, for years we just climbed on Blake's hitches, to be honest, because we weren't like in the ARB world, so to speak. We were more in the science world. And so we were just we climbed on Blake's hitches and Greegrees and hand ascenders for like 5 years. And it's only been the last little while where it's been like, oh, rope wrench. Oh, rope walking. So yeah. And stuff like I love a Taz, mate. The Taz Ascender
oh yeah,
is like, it's not great for production work because you can't use it one-handed and have to have the extra control point. But to go up and down a line real quick, oh mate, there's nothing better than that for sure.
yeah. It must be very good to have a Taz in Tasmania.
Yeah, mate,
As a
it's
back
a
row caravan.
nobody gets tired of that one for sure. But Pierre really helped us out with a couple of units, and mate, we can get anyone with any amount of climbing experience, be it zero or heaps of climbing experience, up into a giant tree on a Taz, and watch them. But just know that device is so simple to use, and you can
Yeah,
still use the rope walk method to get up the line really efficiently, and it just works. So that device has probably really enabled us to take people out into these forests and to these trees and have confidence that they're going to be just fine. Yeah.
So tell us, what's been the most rewarding for you and the team, working with all these, tree-related projects?
Oh, the most rewarding is a being able to have these experiences. I mean, like I said before, we don't have a complicated life and we don't have a lot of bills and all that kind of stuff. So we're able to be like, no, let's just go to America for 3 months and climb trees and hang out. And that was amazing. But just meeting people who from many countries and many languages and many cultures who, as individuals, have a vocabulary about trees and how they understand them and how they engage with trees, but also on a broader scale, understanding different cultures and how those sort of cultures also appreciate trees in a different way. So, and I think it's that insight that's really made me look at Tasmania and be like, mate, we have this amazing stuff and we're just not doing it a justice. These trees need to be like the top tier tourism, top tier nature based experience here in Tasmania for sure. So I feel real lucky about that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I think we're kind of approaching the end here. You know, you were packing up all your gear to go back to
Yeah,
Alice Springs.
yeah,
For you're gonna stay there for a couple of months, or
yeah. So I'll be based out of Alice Springs in Central Australia, but where I'll be working is probably like 1,000 kilometers west of Alice Springs. So uh,
okay,
yeah, like as desert remote as you can possibly be. So our nearest, like the nearest place to get a drink would be 600 kilometers away.
wow.
Um, yeah. So it's it like and like if you can get past the comfort or the lack of comfort and the lack of connectivity with your mates and all that kind of stuff and appreciate where you are, mate. These places are like the most pristine desert landscapes in Australia. And if you're worried about uh, you know doing your washing and stuff like that, like you're just going to miss out on it. So I feel very lucky to have uh, work out there, but also feel very lucky that I can uh, prioritize really enjoying those locations for what they are as well. Yeah.
So I suppose you have to publish the content later because there's essentially no connectivity out there, right?
Oh, there's mobile reception, yeah. So there's like 4G,
That is.
but like there's like a little like a 20 by like a 10 by 10 kilometer circle of 4G in the middle of the desert where there's like a little town. But as soon as you get
Okay.
outside that circle, there's like nothing. Um, yeah, and like that's part of the fun of working for yourself. I guess a lot of the time is there's no deadlines. Like uh,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so it's like there's no pressure for me to get this stuff done. It's like, but the only pressure is
Cool.
sort of comes from me, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, do it in your own pace.
Yeah, man, for sure.
So I'm talking to my cameraman here, see if we have any questions from the audience. I think there's a couple of these, right?
There's two, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
What does it say? It's too
Number
low.
one, how many trees have you mapped so far?
So in Tasmania, uh, we've confirmed around about 315 giant trees, and that's trees that are over 85 meters high or greater than 280 cubic meters in volume. Um, the high trees, we are very unlikely to find any more high trees because of the LiDAR mapping that's happened in the state. So basically, all the places where trees grow has been mapped with LiDAR. So we won't find any other high trees, but those real big fatty volumetric trees, like there's stacks of those kind of trees out there, and there's like inspiring, you know one person can't do like a small fraction of the work, but what we try and aim to do most of all is inspire other people to sort of take on that challenge, I guess, and become involved in their own journey and find these places and find these trees. Yeah.
So when you map the trees, or every tree get a geo point on, or how on a map, or how do you know exactly where to find them?
Yeah. So basically, we have on our website we have the GPS pinpoints of all the known trees, and so you can just go to our website, TheTreeProjects.com, and just click on the page, which particular region you want to go and look at the trees at, and just surf an interactive Google map with pins on it, and you can click on those pins. They'll have the GPS point, it'll have the name of the tree, it'll have the data that we do have for that tree. But I think the key thing is, like, we are lucky to have places that haven't been walked before, or at least not since the Europeans showed up and colonized the state. So there's lots of opportunities for new discoveries of just old, crumbly, really gnarly, big fatty trees. Like the height ones, they're all done pretty much. Yeah.
So what was the second one?
What are some upcoming projects?
Yeah. Did you hear it?
Yeah. So I guess I think COVID's forced us, or I guess inspired us, is a better way of looking at it, to really change our direction. And instead of going for international projects where we travel, we pack up all our bags and travel over to some place for a number of weeks or a month to find and photograph a tree. And it's really forced us to really focus on our home patch here in Tasmania. So the next big project is the Big Tree State, the tourism resource. We're also going to be engaging more with other parties here in Tasmania and trying to be, I guess, more representative and meet with the tourism industry and meet with the government, and just really simple things like meeting with the firefighting service and trying to let them know, all right, if there's a fire, mate, you've got 10 trees in that area, but this is the tree that you need to drop the water on. Just simple stuff like that, because we had a massive fire here in 2019, and like we lost 14 of our top 25 trees, and like the firefighters have priorities, and those priorities aren't giant trees, and that's understandable because life and property, infrastructure are all really important things to save. But if they're dropping water in a random patch of forest, maybe there can be some precision in that to really save like a really unique individual tree. Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that we're going to try and work on over the next few months, and sort of going forward as well. Yeah.
So the trees that are most susceptible to fire are those the eucalyptus trees due to the oil?
So yeah, it's a really bizarre bit of evolution. So the Eucalyptus regnans, the really tall, really fat giant tree. We have a number of species which grow over 85 meters here, but Eucalyptus regnans is like the really big one. And evolutionary, it loves fire. Okay, if you look at the same species up in Victoria, for example, where it's a drier forest, those trees are used to burning. So their evolutionary strategy is to grow hard and then burn hard. All right, and through burning really hard, they burn the entire forest around them, but they've also got massive amounts of seed stock in the soil to take advantage of the ash bed after the fire. And so as we keep going forward into the climate future, like it takes about 20 years for trees to mature and set seed. So a fire interval of more than 20 years is fine, right? But a fire interval of less than 20 years, and that species is lost from the landscape. Interestingly as well, that on the other end of the scale here in Tasmania, where it's a lot colder and wetter, Eucalyptus regnans, that same species, like the seeds typically don't germinate in a shaded forest. So you'll walk to where all these giant, big old gnarly trees are, and there's no young trees. And that's because the rainforest that's grown around that tree over the last 500 years is preventing its seeds from germinating. And unless there is a fire in that rainforest ecosystem or wet sclerophyll, wet eucalypt forest, as those old trees die, eucalyptus, that species of eucalyptus, will be lost from that landscape through being starved out. So on either end of their age scale, there's like this really big dependence on fire. So it's heartbreaking to go around to the southern forests here, which did burn in 2019. But in 300, 400 years, maybe there'll be some big trees there again. But similarly, we have patches here in Tasmania, we have patches of really old forest where the trees are barely alive still, and they're like, and those places equally won't have Eucalyptus regnans in them in the next 100 years because they've been sort of drowned out by the shade. So interesting, really interesting sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, learner. So, yeah. Thank you for this very interesting conversation, Steve. It was certainly a big, real pleasure to have you on the TreeTopChat.
Cool,
And
man.
hear about all your fantastic projects you're doing down there. So good luck, it springs, and we're looking forward to follow you and see some more exciting content coming out. I'm going to check your website and get some more education there. So good luck and have a safe landings in Australia, and have a continued nice weekend. And thanks everybody for watching. Have a nice weekend. I will talk to it. So
It's Saturday night here, bud.
yeah, exactly. Time for a beer. I'm just going back for breakfast.
It's always 5 o'clock somewhere, as they say.
Exactly. Take care. Thank you very much.
You too, buddy. Thanks very much. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.